The chandelier, a cascade of crystal tears, mocks me from above. Each shard of light a tiny, sharp betrayal. Down below, in the cavernous space that was our living room, my living room, his laughter bounces off the Italian marble, a vulgar sound. It's tangled with hers, a girlish giggle that grates against my sanity like nails on a chalkboard. She's perched on the custom velvet sofa, the one I spent months sourcing, her hand resting possessively on his arm. His arm. The one that used to hold me. The air, usually scented with the subtle notes of white tea and peonies I preferred, is now thick with a cloying, cheap perfume and the metallic tang of my own rising fury. My heart doesn't just break, it shatters, the pieces lodging themselves in my lungs, making it hard to breathe. This isn't just an affair. This is an invasion. A conquest. And he looks so damned pleased with himself, sitting there like the king of a stolen castle. If you've ever felt that precise moment when the world tilts, when the ground beneath your feet turns to quicksand, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Your stories, your presence here, it means more than words can say. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me share more of these moments, these battles fought in the quiet spaces of our lives. Our life, from the outside, was a masterpiece. Richard always said so. 39 floors above the city, the penthouse was our kingdom. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panorama of twinkling lights, a constant reminder of the heights we'd scaled. Or rather, the heights he always claimed he'd scaled, with me as his elegant, supportive consort. I remember choosing every fixture, every swatch of fabric, pouring my soul into creating a sanctuary, a testament to what I believed was a shared dream. Our parties were legendary, the guest lists a who's who of the city's elite. He thrived on the accolades, the reflected glory. I simply wanted a home, a partner, a love that felt as real as the cool marble underfoot. I wanted the laughter to be genuine, the touches to linger with affection, not just habit. For years, I told myself it was enough. The whispers of doubt, I'd learned to silence them with the next charity gala, the next exotic vacation, the next carefully curated photograph for the society pages. Normal life was a performance and I, its weary lead actress. The disruption wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow leak, a poisonous gas I'd been inhaling unknowingly for months. But the first solid piece of evidence, the one that ripped the rose-tinted glasses from my face and stomped on them, was a credit card statement. Tucked away amongst the usual extravagances, the spoke suits for him, a new sculpture for the foyer, was a recurring charge. A boutique hotel, not one of our usual haunts, on the other side of town. Small, insignificant payments at first, then larger ones. Dates that coincided with his late nights at the office, his emergency business trips. I remember my hands shaking as I cross-referenced the dates with his calendar. Each match was a fresh stab. The name on the reservation wasn't mine. It was Isabel, a name that tasted like ash in my mouth. Confronting Richard was like wrestling smoke. He didn't deny it, not outright. Instead, he painted me as a paranoid, jealous wife. Isabel? She's a client, darling. A very important one. Are you really going to start questioning my business dealings now? His voice, usually so smooth, had a condescending edge that made my skin crawl. He'd look at me with those eyes, the ones I once thought held the universe, now just reflecting my own bewildered pain. You're tired, he'd say, stressed. Maybe you need a break. Go to the spa. Buy yourself something pretty. He tried to buy my silence, my complicity, with trinkets. The penthouse, once my sanctuary, started to feel like a gilded cage. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford, my mind racing, replaying every shared moment, searching for clues I'd missed. I felt so utterly alone, adrift in a sea of expensive furnishings and hollow reassurances. I started digging deeper, meticulously, quietly. His phone, usually left carelessly on the nightstand, was now password protected. His laptop, always open, now snapped shut whenever I entered the room. The more I searched, the more blatant he became. Whispered phone calls taken on the terrace, sudden, unexplained absences. He started to criticize me more openly, my clothes, my friends, the way I managed the household staff. It was as if by diminishing me, he could justify his betrayal. Our shared friends, the ones who toasted our perfect marriage, now seemed to look at me with a mixture of pity and discomfort. Whispers followed me at events. Was I imagining it? Or was his affair common knowledge, a poorly kept secret everyone but me was privy to? The isolation was crushing. He was poisoning the well, turning our shared world against me, making me doubt my own sanity. He even had the audacity to suggest I was depressing to be around, that perhaps I should find a new hobby, or even a new place to stay for a while. To clear my head, the penthouse, my home, was becoming hostile territory. One particularly bleak afternoon, staring out at the city that felt indifferent to my pain, something inside me snapped. It wasn't loud, it was a quiet, cold click. The tears stopped. The despair, for a moment, receded, replaced by a chilling clarity. He wanted me out? He thought he could just discard me and install his Isabel? A grim smile touched my lips. He had forgotten something crucial. This building, this towering monument to our supposed success, wasn't just his. The land it stood on, the very foundation, had been my grandfather's. I had inherited the controlling shares years before I even met Richard. He'd always treated it as his conquest, his empire, conveniently forgetting the intricate legal documents that underpinned it all. Documents I now remembered with sudden, sharp focus. The penthouse was ours, yes, but the building itself, the ground beneath it, that was mine. An idea, audacious and terrifying, began to form. It wasn't just about escape anymore. It was about reclaiming what was mine, not just the property, but my dignity, my power. He wanted to play games? Fine. But I was about to change the rules and the entire playing field. The months that followed were a masterclass in deception. I played the part of the slowly unraveling wife, just enough to keep his suspicions at bay. I feigned distraction, made mistakes with dinner reservations, forgot his dry cleaning, small acts of incompetence that fed his narrative of my decline. Inside, I was a coiled spring of focused rage and meticulous planning. Lawyers were consulted in secret, their fees paid from a private account I'd maintained since before our marriage. Appraisers came and went under the guise of insurance valuations, each signature on a document, each hushed phone call, felt like forging another piece of armor. Richard, meanwhile, grew bolder. Isabel's name started slipping into his conversation. A brilliant young associate, he'd say with a smug look. He brought her to a gallery opening, introducing her with a casualness that was a deliberate cruelty. He was testing me, pushing me. He even started leaving her things around the penthouse, a scarf here, a lipstick there. Small incursions, staking her claim. He once asked with feigned concern, "Are you sure you're comfortable here, darling? It's a big place. Maybe something cozier would suit you now." The charade was exhausting. There were nights I'd lock myself in the guest bathroom, the only space that still felt mine, and just stare at my reflection, wondering if the woman looking back was strong enough to see this through. The risk was enormous. If he found out before everything was finalized. The call came on a Tuesday. My lawyer, his voice calm and professional. "It's done, Amelia. The buyers have signed. The building is officially sold. The funds will clear by Friday. They wish to take possession effective immediately." A wave of dizziness washed over me. Done. All those whispered meetings, the agonizing tension, the fear of discovery. It was over. I remember sinking into a chair in my study, the city lights a blur through the window. It wasn't elation I felt, not yet. It was a profound, bone-deep weariness, and a sliver of something cold and hard. Resolve. That same evening, Richard came home, a triumphant, almost predatory gleam in his eye. He poured himself a brandy, swirled it, then turned to me. "Amelia," he began, his tone dripping with false magnanimity, "I think it's time we were honest. Things haven't been working for a while. Isabel, well, she understands me. She's moving in." This weekend he expected tears, hysterics, a scene. He probably relished the thought. He didn't know he was playing out the final act of a script I had already written. His timing was, in a twisted way, perfect. He was walking right into the trap, carrying his own luggage. Saturday morning. I'd told Richard the first was going to visit my sister for the weekend. To process, he barely hid his relief. I didn't go to my sister's. Instead, I sat in a small cafe across the street from our building, a steaming cup of tea warming my hands, my face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses. I watched as his car pulled up, Isabel beside him, beaming. I watched as his movers, began unloading her belongings, cheap suitcases and garish artwork that would clash horribly with the minimalist elegance I'd cultivated. I saw Richard, expansive and proud, ushering her into the lobby, gesturing grandly as if presenting her with a kingdom. He probably took her straight up to the penthouse, my penthouse. I let him have an hour to settle in, to feel like the king of his new castle. Then I made a call. "They're ready for you," I said softly. From my vantage point, I saw them arrive. Not a SWAT team, nothing so crude. Just a few impeccably dressed men and women, carrying briefcases, accompanied by the building's regular security chief, who now answered to new masters. They entered the lobby. I couldn't see what happened inside, but I could imagine it. The polite interruption. The presentation of documents. Richard's initial bluster, his outrage. Isabel's confusion, then her dawning panic. The slow, horrifying realization that the locks were being changed, that their names were not on any list except one, the eviction notice. It took another 30 minutes. Then, the grand entrance of the building spat them out. Richard, his face a mask of purple fury, arguing with the security chief who stood impassive, arms crossed. Isabel was weeping, clutching a designer handbag that looked comically out of place next to the pile of hastily packed, mismatched luggage now sitting on the sidewalk. He tried his phone, probably calling his lawyers, his powerful friends, anyone who would listen. But the ink was dry. The deal was done. The building held its breath, no longer his. I took a slow sip of my tea. It was Earl Grey. Strong and just a little bit bitter. Like revenge. He looked up then, his eyes scanning the street, wild and desperate. For a fleeting second, his gaze passed over the cafe, over me. He didn't see me. He was too consumed by his own spectacular implosion. He had thought he was orchestrating my exit. He never imagined I was the one holding the demolition charges. The aftermath wasn't a blaze of glory. It was quiet. The city lights still twinkled, but they seemed softer now, less mocking. The penthouse, when I finally saw it again briefly during the handover to the new management company representing the anonymous buyer, me, through several shell corporations, a detail Richard would never uncover, felt alien. It was just an empty space, stripped of his presence, of her fleeting invasion, and even of my memories. It held no power over me anymore. Selling the entire building wasn't just about punishing Richard. It was about severing the last tie to a life that had slowly been suffocating me. It was about taking something he valued, something he thought defined his status, and showing him it was never truly his to control. There was a strange emptiness in the days that followed, the kind that comes after a long, brutal storm. The anger, so long my constant companion, began to recede, leaving behind a landscape of grief, yes, but also peace. A quiet, resilient peace. I didn't win bigger in the sense of lavish parties or public vindication. My victory was internal, profound. It was the knowledge that I had faced betrayal not with hysterics, but with cold, calculated precision. That I had taken his arrogance and used it as the very tool of his undoing. He tried to take my home, my dignity. I took his kingdom. I learned that silence can be a weapon and patience a shield. I learned that the foundations I laid, both literal and metaphorical, were stronger than he ever bothered to notice. I bought a small cottage by the sea, a place filled with light and the sound of the waves, a place where the only whispers are the wind. It's a different kind of kingdom. One built not on illusion, but on the quiet strength I found in the wreckage of my old life. If this story, this reclaiming of self, resonated with a battle you fought, or a quiet strength you discovered when you thought all was lost? I'd love to hear your version in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from. Your stories matter. Thanks for being here with me. Subscribing helps bring more of these narratives, these moments of quiet defiance, to life.